Good evening. Yes, it is indeed me, the one and only Richard Nixon. Apparently, people are forgetting me and my political controversy, the political controversy upon which all other political controversies draw their names. Watergate, for God's sake. And now we have this orange-faced buffoon with this porn-gate? Sex-gate. My God. Well, anyway, I have taken up a new post here at the Ministry of Propaganda. I will be doing my best to give you a short summary of the major events of the week. I know that most of my understanding and perspective is of a 1970s politician, but I might remind you that Biden is a 1970s politician. So here are the major news stories of the week. Firstly, Donald Trump, indicted and accused of hush money payment to a porn star during the 2016 presidential campaign, is shamelessly milking his legal woes for all they're worth. Recent polls have shown a disturbing uptick in support for Trump, and his fellow Republicans are shamelessly coming to his defense. The Trump campaign, meanwhile, is using his indictment as a fundraising tool, and they claim to have raked in a whopping $7 million since the news broke. In other developments in the USA, NASA has announced the 4 astronauts who will be traveling to the moon on Artemis II. Big whoop! At the UN, Russia has assumed the rotational presidency of the UN Security Council. I'm sure they'll do a bang-up job. Speaking of Eastern Europe, there are rumblings that Ukraine may finally counterattack in the ongoing war with Russia. It's about damn time. Russia continues to gobble up territory in Bakhmut, and it's high time Ukraine fought back. We've spent a lot of money there. This week, a Russian military blogger was killed in a terrorist attack in St. Petersburg. It's a tragedy, to be sure, but I'm not exactly shedding tears over it. Finland has joined NATO, ending their neutrality policy. It's about time they picked a side. Sweden is trying to join too, but Turkey and Hungary are blocking them. Sounds like a big old mess to me. There was a violent exchange between Palestinians and Israeli police at the Oxamos compound in Jerusalem. At least 37 Palestinians were injured. Just another day in the Middle East, I suppose. Oil prices have surged after OPEC members announced production cuts. Big whoop. Rahul Gandhi, an Indian opposition leader and critic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, had his 2-year prison sentence suspended by an Indian court. Yawn. Turning to China, the Philippines has announced that U.S. forces will have access to 4 more military bases. This comes at a time when tensions are rising between the U.S. and China, and it's anyone's guess how Beijing will react. China's regulators are conducting a cybersecurity probe of Micron Technologies, a top American chip maker. This is Beijing's most serious retaliation yet against Washington, and its attempts to cut China off from high-end chips. Just what we need, more tension between China and the U.S. On the diplomatic front, France's President Emmanuel Macron is meeting with China's President Xi Jinping to relaunch a strategic partnership between Europe and China. Macron wants Xi to play a major role in bringing peace to Ukraine. Good luck with that. Meanwhile, Speaker Kevin McCarthy met with Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen, becoming the most senior elected official to meet with a Taiwanese president on American soil since Washington established diplomatic relations with Beijing. Sounds like a recipe for disaster. Well, that's all from me for this week. Please like and share this video, and please subscribe to our channel. Now turning to our hosts, Rich and Chris. You are watching and listening to the Ministry of Propaganda, helping you think.
Yes, good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ministry of Propaganda. And me and Chris are indeed going to be talking about Trump's indictment, the historic indictment of a current and former, or current runner for president and a former president. First time ever. So, Chris, where do you want to begin with this one?
Well, it's been quite an exciting week, hasn't it? It's been very unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever happened. I dare say, is it ever going to happen again? It does seem to be on subjects of sort of money in politics, as we've sort of discussed before with Brazil. Obviously, even if the worst case scenario for him and he does go to prison, the message of Brazil teaches us that it doesn't stop you from coming out of prison and becoming a president afterwards. Anything can happen in this crazy days that we live in. Obviously, it was just a throwaway thought that I noticed that on the same day he was arrested, Nicola Sturgeon's husband was also arrested for campaign finance allegations. I thought that was just an interesting coincidence. I'm sure the two things aren't related. But yeah, it's been quite an interesting sort of development. I am keen to see where this goes. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. So there's obviously there are different opinions about this. Obviously, from the liberal side, the Democrat side, they're reveling in it actually, and trying to make Trump look as bad as possible. Obviously, as you'd expect, it's election cycle. So the first thing I like to say is, welcome to the 2024 election cycle. Fully now, we're fully in. It's really started now. So what are we? Basically 2 years, more or less, a year and a half ahead, which is become ordinary now. The election cycle, the campaigning for presidential election starts just later and later. So this is now the norm. But yeah, I think we can officially say that this is now, we're entering that properly, deeply. There is obviously a bit of, as Nixon mentioned at the beginning of our show, political controversies are not that uncommon. I mean, as he said, Watergate, where Nixon paid, well, not paid, but got goons, government goons, the plumbers, to go and spy on the opposition, using state resources to do that. But there's also other things. I mean, this is something that the Financial Times mentioned. So the Financial Times takes quite a sort of look on this, which I'll bring up here. Is, of course, they talk about they're referencing something that happened in 1923, an unprecedented government scandal, bribery, corruption, payoffs, and cover-up in the White House rocked the U.S. They're actually not quoting this current thing with Trump. They're talking about something that happened in 1923, something called the Teapot Dome scandal, which I've never heard of before. But basically, it wasn't a president, but it was a senior member of the cabinet, a secretary of the interior, basically for, enormous bribes to lease government oil reserves to his own cronies at rock bottom prices. But the thing that I do agree with here that the Financial Times brings up is, if you go on Wikipedia, you can curate and see 134 federal US politicians who have been convicted of criminal wrongdoing. I'm obviously not going to show you the whole list. We're not going to go through it. But the point is, you even if you think of the top of your head, Watergate, Iran, Contras, when the CIA and Reagan basically were selling drugs to,
and Oliver North, who took the blame for Reagan for that, is a Fox News host. There was no repercussions for that. What's interesting is that it's not that there's a surprise that politicians commit crime. We all know this. This happens every day, and we take it for granted. What's surprising is when they choose to enforce the law on these people. That's where it becomes political. And in my eyes, it is 100% political, the decision to pursue charges against Donald Trump. The fact that he committed the charges is almost a joke. He's a caricature of a corrupt capitalist businessman. He's like the heads of OCP from the original Robocop films in the 80s. Like, it's cartoonishly corrupt, but the fact that they've chosen to go after him for this, that's where it starts to enter into this gray area of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, I mean, if we do just bring on Nixon's particular thing, so Watergate, Ford, Gerald Ford, the president that followed him, then, basically, waived it. So he basically said that they would not go for an indictment or charges of bribery, extortion, tax fraud, and criminal conspiracy. So the other thing is also then Bill Clinton. So obviously Monika Lewinsky, if we all remember that one, the oral sex in the White House. Clinton, took part in that sexual relations. He also negotiated a bargain.
By today's standards, that is rape. We'd all agree, if we were to ask the question what Clinton did to Monica at that point, that was workplace rape. She had no ability to reject the president. I mean, if the president comes on to me, how am I going to say no? He's the president. He's the most powerful person in the world.
Yeah,
that is literally
even by today's standards. Yeah, exactly. So that was in late 90s, so not that long ago. The point being, he was allowed to basically get away with that. They negotiated a bargain, so they wouldn't, indict him. And also, he gave false testimony too there. So he gave a false testimony about what happened there. The famous line, "I did not have sexual relations." So, they tried to get him, on some sort of technicality. But the point is that this is what Trump is being done for. That he said the money sent to Cohen was for business, and it wasn't. So that's a form of false, of lying, a false testimony in a sense. So yeah, that you're right. This is a bit unprecedented. This is where the whole witch hunt thing comes in. That Trump it's different from Trump. Which I think then, if you think about Nixon, if you think about Reagan, if you think about Clinton, there is a bit of a double standard there.
Yeah, the fact that it is Trump, if the charges that they have got him to, like you say, it's at first when they got out, they said it was a misdemeanor. Now they've said it's a felony, but it's a I can't what it is, F- felony. Basically, it's the bottom rank of felony before that makes it so. So it feels like they've made almost a mountain out of a molehill. They wanted to charge him with something. That's what the mentality seems to look like. That they've made a decision, we're going to go after him for something, and then they found something, rather than it being the opposite way around, which a criminal investigation would, in an honest judiciary, you'd expect it to be the investigation comes first, where it seems it's the other way around. They've charged him and then had a look and say, okay, now let's figure out what we're going to charge you with.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. The Global Times has a good perspective on this, talking about, they categorize it as the weaponization of the legal system. So, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but that's the point they're making, is that this, as we've just said, is, turning the courts, turning the judicial system into a very political space. I mean, obviously it is a political space. But if you think about, even before this, you did have the Russiagate investigations and all of that. And if you do look at this and think of how long these things go on for, it does seem to be a political strategy to keep, his name being mentioned in association with all sorts of crimes. So associations with Russia, which will strike a chord with some people. Then you have, this paying off hush money to a porn star, which will strike a chord with some political groups. And then you think about the other ones, of course, then the documents, them finding the documents, the secret documents at Mar-a-Lago. Then you also have January 6th, his involvement in that. And then you have, I'm trying to keep track of all of these things. I think there's about 5 or 6 different cases, which does seem, at least from his opponent's side, them trying to, death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly.
On the flip side, though, Trump is, you could say, also needs this, actually. He's loving this because he can be seen to be a victim, and he's getting press. I mean, this is the guy who said, Mexicans are rapists and criminals, who said Muslims, who banned Muslims. So he can make his own controversies and make himself sound bad, look bad. It doesn't matter. That seems to be a part of his skill. I mean, he's beyond the Teflon man. He's something else. So even this, if this is a tactic from the liberals, from the Democrats, Trump is very good at using stuff that sounds bad to make himself, to achieve his own aims.
Yeah, exactly. Committing crimes and then complaining to people that they're going to come after you for committing crimes. It's a way of writing self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Of course, they're going to come after you when you're doing something wrong. That seems to be what does happen. What's interesting is they're now saying, though, that they're going to go after him for the documents as well. Now, when they've found the documents, and they made a huge noise about finding him, it was the first sensational of it. Looks like the FBI raided Trump. But then Mike Pence came out afterwards and said, oh, documents have also been found in my house. Biden came out, said that they've been found in his house. His excuse that he'd used documents to hide a light on his alarm clock because he couldn't turn the light off, so it was blind. It was flashing in his face. He's like he's just playing into the I'm the old senile grandpa. And it's
right.
And so why weren't you getting the same treatment of the FBI knocking down your door like Trump did?
Yeah. No, I think that was that awkward news that Biden had also been doing that. So I didn't know about the alarm clock, though. I think that's brilliant.
So if Trump did it, Pence did it, Biden did it and everyone else did it. At this point, you got to think, well, is the blame really on them, or is it on the people who are meant to be holding the records? Because they don't seem to be doing a tremendous job of keeping track of their catalog. If everybody can just book them out, I mean, I get chased by libraries more than they seem to get chased by their own record keepers.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, on the specifics of this case, I didn't know that there was another porn star that had also been paid off. And I mean, we're also seeing some of the dirty tactics. And like you said, we've talked about Lula and politics and how money and politics play around, and that's a central piece of what we're talking about today. But I had no idea that there was another Playboy model that had been paid off. And apparently also a doorman that had been paid off. But the thing that I found interesting about this is this catch and kill tactic, which really, like, when you're talking about a multi-party democracy and how money is involved in it, only the rich can actually win at this game, because you have to have the ability, so you have to have the money to be able to buy off a potentially damaging story. So apparently this kill and capture thing was, a doorman had a story about a potential child born out of wedlock with another woman, and Trump being the father, and they paid this guy for the story. He thought they were going to publish the story. They buy the rights, and then they just sit on it. So they catch and kill the story. And that just, again, shows you that if you're going to run against these people, you're going to have to be able to do things like that. And which common person is going to be able to do that?
Yeah. They can just buy a story, and effectively they just bought your silence, and it's legal.
Yeah.
As long as you don't write it off as a business expense. That seems to be
right.
That sort of brings it back to why this has happened, because Trump as a character, as a politician, he's managed to almost transcend traditional conservative liberal politics in America. By any analysis of Trump's actual beliefs, he is not a traditional conservative. I think a lot of what he's passed as conservative bills, he doesn't care about one way or the other. Like the fact that there's so many evangelicals in America who love him because he saves babies by attacking abortion bills. I cannot imagine that Trump has pushed. I can imagine that he's pushed many a women into abortions in his life. I don't think he cares about that one way or the other. He knows how to play a base. And when you watch his old videos from before he was a politician, when you ask, so we didn't have professional minders around him, when he's asked a question about foreign policy, his unfiltered gut reaction tends to be right. When you ask him about Iraq, no, we shouldn't have gone in. When you ask him about Libya, no, we shouldn't have gone in. It was always very much an isolationist. The negotiation did with Kim Jong-un, case in point, which the liberal media attacked him for no end, as if it was a negative thing that he was reaching across to try and make peace with one of America's enemies. But the liberals, for some reason, when Obama did it or proposed doing it, they were up in arms. They couldn't get enough of it. Or when he shook hands with Raul Castro, they were loving it. But when Trump does something similar, at that point, that's too far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's also something that I read from, a Guardian article, actually. I'll bring it up here. And it's written by a guy called Sidney Blumenthal. So this is he used to work for, I'll just click on this here. He used to work for the Clintons, basically. So he's a former senior advisor to Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Okay, so you can kind of guess, and it's in the Guardian, you can kind of guess his opinion on things. But I do find it useful, actually, that, when you have one set of oligarchs fighting another set of oligarchs, they bring up good rubbish about each other. They know each other's skeletons. So it's nice to see, the enemy of our enemy is publishing useful information about the filthy inner workings of how oligarchs run the West. So this thing, it talks about Rupert Murdoch and the Koch network. And like you just said there, Chris, about the base and how Trump is able to, play the base of the Republican Party, which actually has become his base. He wiped out, the rest of the Republican Party. And I think that's what we're seeing here too, is that DeSantis has come out. DeSantis was supposed to be the guy who's going to potentially beat Trump. I don't know if he can do that now, because he's put his lot behind him on this particular issue. He could potentially bring it back, but it's certainly something he has to now explain away. But the thing I'd like to talk about here, just mention here, is the Koch brothers and and Murdoch. So on the 5th of February, the Koch dark money syndicate held a conference of its billionaire donors and key activists in Palm Springs, California, to lay the groundwork for the dawning of the post-Trump age. There it was decided to swing its enormous resources behind the candidacy of Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who they had originally cultivated. It was one of the Tea Party hothouse congressmen. So what's interesting here is, of course, that DeSantis is, it mentions Tea Party, right? So the Koch brothers, the Koch, oligarchs, want as little regulation on the environment and sort of laissez-faire, capitalism, where big companies can do what the hell they want. And of course, that's what DeSantis has been, putting out, and sort of cutting on Medicare, cutting on Social Security, and all that kind of stuff. And it sort of crashes right into Trump in a sense, because Trump then, knowing that a lot of the voters in Florida, a lot of the voters are Republican, are older people who do rely on some Social Security. So he actually, then criticizes him for, not supporting those kinds of policies. So I think this is very interesting, just seeing the oligarchs clashing on all these things.
Yeah. So Trump, when he first ran in 2016, he was almost seen as a legitimate sort of figurehead of the Tea Party movement. He was never part of it originally, but the fact that he had rallied between people like Sarah Palin, they were all people that were effectively born out of that movement. They all rallied around him, so he was sort of seen as that figure. Where now Ron DeSantis was being portrayed as a more gentlemanly version of Trump, who didn't come with any of the sort of baggage, the controversy. But like I say, now after these indictments, it feels like the rivalry has had to be put on hold, because Trump's going to now be this symbol of deep state oppression against conservatives. So they're going to have to rally around him. And I feel like it almost feels like it's going to be a whole home goal by the Democrats for doing this. Because it is, that's why it is political. I mean, the judge who's indicting Trump, who's the same judge who's previously indicted him, which feels corrupt. I would have assumed, if it's anything like this country where you can't have the same judge for two different crimes. I know America is a different country, it's a different judiciary, but I'd be shocked if that's not generally the case there as well. Also, this judge is a Democrat, and as someone pointed out, a George Soros funded Democrat. That George Soros put money into his campaign, which George Soros himself is worth an episode of himself, just because he is the boogeyman of liberal, socialist, communist billionaires somehow. In my head, it's just the sort of successor of the Jewish sort of control. It's a modern version of that conspiracy, isn't it? That's the fact that they home in on a Jewish man every time. George Soros, I'm sure, is no worse than any other non-Jewish billionaire, but they home in like hawks onto these rich Jews to attack them. For some reason, the other one's gone out of my head. Who's the other famous one? The
Rothschilds.
Rothschilds, yes, just completely mind blank there. It's the modern successor to the Rothschild sort of line, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So actually, I'll bring up some of the funding, donors and lobbyists actually a bit later. I've got a great website. We've discussed it before, OpenSecrets.org, where we can see some interesting things. But I'll bring that up in a moment. But on this thing of you said sort of the Democrats shooting themselves in the foot. I just want to show one thing, which is again from that Guardian article. So Trump's announcement on 18th of March that he would be arrested and charged in New York 3 days later, born of a combination of panic and seizing an opportunity for grift, was not a deliberate strategic masterstroke, though it had that effect. So in February, DeSantis led Trump by 45% to 41%. So this is obviously for the Republican nominee for the presidential race of 2024.
Yep.
In the poll taken just after Trump said he would be arrested, Trump shot ahead into the lead for 47% to 39%. Okay, and then after he was indicted, he left DeSantis in the dust, 57 to 31. So basically, this whole thing has taken Trump losing 41. He was down 41, and now he's leading 57. So he's streaked ahead, nearly 20% ahead. So yeah, but this is something then you can, you then have to think how much credit do you want to give to the Democrats? So they always said, lots of the pundits and Democrat sort of strategists, or people that sort of speak like that at least, said if it's a Trump-Biden race, they want that because Biden can beat Trump. There's a track record there. That's their thinking. So if you give a lot of credit to the Democratic strategic mind, which I don't really, but if you do, you could say then, pushing their district governor or attorney to make this indictment pushes Trump into the head of the race, pushing DeSantis out. And then that means they've got the easier target to beat, the easier opponent to beat in 2024. But that's pretty ambitious. It's a very ambitious, and also, I mean, there's a lot of risk to that if you think that's true. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on that, Chris.
Yeah, well, with how close the sort of political margins are at the moment, it's not even about what Trump is, it's about what he represents. And this is where the battlefield sort of is now. Just to sort of compare it to the UK, I watched the new chairman of the UK Conservative Party did this interview a few weeks ago where he accidentally sort of said how the sausage was made where he shouldn't have done. Where he said in the last election, the Conservatives won because we had Corbyn to bash and we had Brexit. In the next election, we don't have those. So what we are going to lean on is culture wars. So you're going to hear a lot about wokeness. You're going to hear a lot about trans issues, and that's what we're going to be basing our fight on. And that, when you look throughout the sort of cultural discord at the moment, that does seem to be where the distraction is of this modern strain of identity politics that's infected politics on all levels. It's going to be so easy for Trump and the Republicans over there to wage this battle, this election, on woke culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the conservative politicians sort of openly said that. It's
well, it was their chairman. He is a renowned idiot. I'm sure he probably got berated for saying it out loud afterwards. Yeah. So you weren't meant to admit that bit. Yeah. You were meant to do.
Yeah. I mean, although, if you think about Nord Stream and all these other kinds of things, that politicians often now say things that you just go, what? You're saying that? You're not supposed to be saying that.
Surely you know there was a camera?
Yeah, right. So that's the culture war stuff does seem to be apply certainly to Britain and to the US and maybe elsewhere too.
Yes,
and
Russia very much so. We've seen that. We've seen a lot of that coming out of Russian political figures at the moment, where they're also sort of playing that card as the protectors of traditional values against woke culture, which is kind of why a lot of Republicans identify as well, which is interesting that it's how it sort of transcended traditional politics, that there isn't a sort of ill-defined left-wing team and a right-wing team at the moment. Everything's very muddled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's this thing, the single issue voter, right? So, whether that's guns, whether that's abortion, whether that's cultural issues, whether that's immigration. Yeah. So this is a known phenomenon in America, the single issue voter. So I do think that there is, this is also an opinion shared by the guys at the Global Times, where they said, so there's one analysis which says, okay, this has galvanized the Republican base. Now Trump can get the candidacy, and the Democrats are stupid for pursuing this kind of stuff because he's going to be basically the savior. He's going to be Jesus. I mean, you had Marjorie Taylor Greene already has called him Mandela and referenced Mandela. That
Jesus.
I
heard him in the 60-minute interview say that he's in the same group as Mandela and Jesus.
Mandela and Jesus. So that's one side. That, of course, yeah, okay, he's going to galvanize amongst those people. But to be honest, I think he already had that vote. If you're already, it's the same group of people. I don't think that's winning new people that many. I mean, I might be wrong, but I don't think so, because realistically, if we look at the numbers from the last two elections, 2016 and 2020, Trump lost the popular vote twice. So he had less people vote for him in total. He only wins on the electoral colleges, right? So, and the sort of swing states are your voters that are not undecided. So I don't know if this court case stuff, all of them, are going to bring enough of those people on board. So the Global Times analysis, which they interviewed a guy from a university in China who's an expert on North American politics, and he said that it's the undecideds, the middle voters, the neutral voters. For this is going to be a big turnoff. It's him in court, and they're hearing stories about the dirty dealings and about the boxes and about January 6th and about this and about that, and they're just going to see as chaos, and they're not going to like it. So that's at least one perspective on this too, is that for your swing voters, your undecideds, this is not good. It's good for the Republican base. Sure, you're going to get the votes there, but it's not good for the undecideds, which is another way of looking at it, another important thing to consider.
Yeah, it's a lot of the teams seem to be so sort of solidified now, apart from obviously that middle section, which is what you're sort of going after in every election to win or lose. But you have to sort of ask the question at this point: when does this country become ungovernable? When you've got when Trump got in, you had the never Trumpers, not my president, and all the Republicans saying sort of just suck it up, buttercup. You're being childish liberals, of course, as your president. Then when Biden got in, they did the exact same thing. That the election's stolen, completely denying him. What's the saying that they were saying that they were chanting at the football stadiums? Let's go, Brandon, which has just become everywhere. I've heard people in Congress say it now. But you've got to think.
Well, let's go what?
Let's go, Brandon. Have you not heard Let's Go, Brandon?
No, what's the reference?
It was at a NASCAR race where the guy Brandon won the race, and the woman was saying, and you can hear them chanting it behind you. Let's go, Brandon. They were chanting "fuck Joe Biden," because it was now it's become a thing that people wear T-shirts saying "Let's go, Brandon," meaning that.
Okay, that's right.
But you got to think, when is this country going to become ungovernable? That every 4 years, everybody's dreading it, that the opposition is going to come in and do something horrible to everyone who. Somebody heard the term said a few days ago, which I thought was really potent, that America seems to be in a cold civil war.
Yes.
It's almost like the fighting's just not started yet. But the fact that we've heard Trump use the actual words in a conversation, civil war, and even that, it's like, wow, that's not been said by somebody of your position for like 150 years to even have said that. It's not. It doesn't seem as cartoonishly out of the realms of possibility as it did 20 years ago.
Yeah,
America is not a stable regime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that the Koch brothers, Rupert Murdoch, were hoping to turn and move away from Trump because of January 6th and all this stuff. But now, because they're throwing all the way behind it, that he's not gone, which means that, yes, that polarization, his polarizing effect, along with just problems between the oligarchs and mismanagement of the economy and poverty and corruption and whatnot. The potential for that is not gone. It's we're back again to sort of late 2020. Early. What was that? 2021, I've confused myself. 2019, when the insurrection, 2021, sorry, late 2020, early 2021. We're looking back at that kind of polarized politics, I think.
Yeah. And when you look at the sort of demographics of where it is, where the Civil War was the North versus South. This Civil War, if it was to come, a second Civil War, it wouldn't be a war against state versus state. It would be a war within the states themselves. This is almost neighborhood to neighborhood. Your neighbor could hate you. And everything that you stand for. It's not absolutely. As the lines aren't as well defined as they were back then.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. This is a far more complicated distribution of the different camps. Yeah. I think there's anything else I wanted to add on this particular stuff. I mean, obviously, as we mentioned, the general trend here is corruption in politics, and we're obviously seeing a lot of Trump's side of the story. And Trump mentioned at his speech in Mar-a-Lago about Hunter Biden's laptop and this kind of stuff. So I think what we should look at just now, I'm going to bring it up, is money in politics. So I'm going to bring up this website here. It's called OpenSecrets. So I mentioned it, I think, last week, opensecrets.org. It's an NGO that tries to track as much money in American politics as possible. I think that it hasn't got everything because there's obviously money that we don't know about and meetings we don't know about and stuff. But at least they try and get as much on the official side. So who are the biggest donors? And there's your man, George Soros, number one, obviously giving to the blue side, to the Democrats. So this is for 2021 to 2022. He gave $178 million to Democrats and $0 to Republicans. But obviously on the other side, you do have your rich Republican donors. So number two is Richard Uihlein. I don't know who this is. I believe there's obviously some billionaire. Then you have Kenneth C. Griffin, 72 million, 89 million for Richard Uihlein. Jeffrey S. and Janine Yass. Don't know who these people are. And then obviously Michael Bloomberg, number five. Timothy Mellon, don't know who that is. Sam Bankman-Fried, and of course a whole bunch of other people. Peter Thiel, I've heard of that one before. But yeah, these are these are the people that really run American politics. This is where, this is real politics here. This is the money behind all the campaigns. These campaigns don't happen without this money. So this is the list of this is who owns America, basically. All of these different individuals here. But yeah, so it seems a bit ridiculous in some sense to actually talk about Trump's sort of stuff, paying off people's stuff, when we know openly that hundreds of millions of dollars get paid by all sorts of individuals. And then if you want, I'll bring up some some of the industries too, if you want to take a look at that in a moment. But yeah, Chris, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's sort of open air corruption that everybody sort of knows about and accepts. In America, of course, where it's accepted legally that money equals speech, as confusing as that is, but that was the court's decision that money is allowed because money is an expression of free speech. So pumping money into a campaign, that's what it amounts to. Of course, that gives an interesting sort of paradigm that it means that poor people have less free speech than rich people, because if that's what money is, then that's what it means. Where if you were to look at that, where both sides were funded by billionaires, compare that to the UK, where of course the Labour Party does get money from individuals as well. The idea is that its primary funding is meant to come from the trade unions and the labour movement. That just doesn't seem to be something that happens in America at all, or if it does, then it's to a minute amount that it's not even worth mentioning. Like there was no trade unions listed on that list that you just showed. So there's no workers' union donate, whether liberal or conservative, donate into either party.
Yeah, so actually, I'll bring that up here because you can find all of this on OpenSecrets. So I'll show you right now. So we've got just for reference. So here's defense, right? So defense companies that lobby, right? So Lockheed Martin comes up, And Lockheed Martin actually hedges its bets, so they give to both sides. Colsa Corp, I don't know what that is, but very Republican. But you can see all the guys here: Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, and all the people that make the arms, and the BAE System. So even a foreign company, so that's a British company that gives $1 million to both sides, it seems. But yeah, in terms of unions, you do actually get some public sector unions putting money in, but I think comparatively, National Education Association, total contributions, $48 million. So they do have some role in politics. But if you remember that the National Education Association gives $48 million, right? George Soros was 196. So yeah, he gives a lot more. I have a feeling, we haven't looked at the totals here, but I have a feeling the unions don't give as much. So some of them only give like, a few hundred thousand dollars. So, down here, not too far from the top, not even $1 million. So number 8 is only $1 million for, donations. So yeah, of course, everyone's free to play the game, but the game is money. So the people with money will win.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost sort of just feeds into the sort of Marxist sort of definition of a bourgeois election, that when you've got companies like Lockheed Martin hedging their bets, funding both sides. So, well, you've just shown us that whatever side I'm voting for is the exact same outcome. You're always voting for the same companies, the same. If they're the people who control the economy, control the means of production, then the tie wearers at the front they're just talking heads who have no real power because power's in the hands of these industries.
Yeah. The thing I find quite funny about this, funny, is if you read the 173 counts of charges against politicians in the US over the last 250 years, which is on Wikipedia there, you'll see bribery, paid to give a contract to someone. They took money so that they would open up a reserve for drilling or whatever. But the reason it's called bribery is because you took money while you were in office to do this or that. But lobbying is what then? Giving the money first and then getting the job and then giving the policies in some sort of very clever way, trying to give them what they wanted. So what isn't really, it just seems to be a technical difference. Oh, you took the money in office, that's bribery. You took the money before office, oh no, that's just lobbying. That's fine.
Yeah, and to be fair to them as well, the Americans actually seem to be a little bit better on this than we are in the UK. Where in the UK, there's a group on YouTube, a group of journalists called Led by Donkeys, and they do absolutely amazing investigations where they've been catching primarily Tory MPs at the moment by setting up fake companies and then interviewing these Tory MPs to lobby on their behalf for insane amounts of money, literally tens of thousands per day for consulting, basically using their contact book that they've made in Parliament to lobby for them to get deals for these private companies. And from because obviously it's come out and it's been put in the BBC, everyone reporting on it, and everyone who's come out to explain it away has pointed out this is completely illegal. So you might frown at it, but they've done nothing wrong. It's embarrassing that you've seen it.
Yeah.
So how is that? How is that not legal? It should be illegal.
Right. There's also another thing that I'm not going to bring it up, but there's a term called revolving door in sort of lobbying and politics, where never mind just the normal money being given around, is that you have politicians who then leave politics and go and work for the company. So they go work then on the board of a company, then work on that board for a number of years, and then get back into politics as a politician. So and it's just madness. You're saying that you don't support legislation regarding emissions of a certain steel factory. Oh, okay. Where were you 5 years ago? Oh, you were working at that steel factory. You were the executive. You were the one getting all the profits. Okay, and then so it's insane. It's insane. I mean, it's not, and as you said, it's not even hidden. So in a sense, it's also these people have no shame. Everyone knows you were former executive. Everyone knows you took money. Everyone can see it there. How much you take from the prison industrial complex, from defense, whatever.
Example of that in the UK. Obviously, when we had the condemned government, the coalition between the Liberals and the Conservatives, our vice prime minister was Nick Clegg. After he left government, he got hired as the vice president of Facebook. Now, when you look at even Nick Clegg's not IMDb, Wikipedia, he's got no technology companies in his past. They didn't hire him because he knew Facebook. They hired him because of his political clout, which apparently Nick Clegg has. But that's clearly who's hiring Nick Clegg for anything other than, to be fair, I don't even understand why you'd hire him for. The only thing I remember him for is that awful auto-tune apology song he got made to do.
Yeah. Poor Nick Clegg. Anyway, I will read actually one of these things here. This is a revolving door example. So they've actually got this as a special on OpenSecrets. So revolving door, and this is their featured revolver. It's a great name, featured revolver. So Lloyd Austin became the first Black Secretary of Defense after the Senate confirmed him to post on January 22nd. Austin served in the U.S. Army from 1975 to 2012. So during his stint as head of U.S. forces in Iraq, Austin reportedly befriended President Joe Biden's son, Beau. Austin was then nominated to become the Army's Vice Chief of Staff just a year later. Then President Barack Obama tapped Austin to head up U.S. Central Command. After the election of former President Donald Trump in 2016, Austin left the public sector and assumed positions on the corporate boards of steel manufacturing giant Nucor Corporation, Tenet Healthcare, and United Technologies, which merged with defense contractor Raytheon Company in 2020. The merged corporation, Raytheon Technologies, is among the top 5 lobbying spenders in the defense sector and spent almost $11 billion on lobbying in 2020. Austin earned 7 figures from the defense companies. Austin stepped down from all 3 board positions following his nomination in 2020. Prior to joining the Biden administration, Austin worked alongside fellow cabinet member Antony Blinken at Pine Island Capital Partners, a private equity firm investing in defense companies that touted its access to Washington. So, I mean, it's literally, again, it is all open secrets, as the name of the website says. But this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. We literally, I mean, I took that steel company as an example, but this is literally someone who did that. But yeah, it's there. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Let me say it is open air corruption. It almost shows that you get these campaign groups trying to ban things or trying to campaign against things in civilian life, like the we alluded to last time with the gun control argument. It all makes it a mute point when you're against a lobby group. Like the NRA have incredible amounts of resources, incredible amount of funds, even though by people they have a minuscule amount compared to the people against them. But the people against them aren't billionaires.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's money talks, unfortunately, in American politics.
It is. And then when you start looking at it closely, so on the face of it, you go, oh, what? Trump is being indicted for paying off a porn star, and his lawyer's in jail for doing it. So he's obviously, there was a crime and Trump lied about it. This is terrible. Money in politics. But as soon as you look at it, you go, wait, hold on. They're all rotten. The entire thing is rotten. Everyone is doing this in different shapes and forms all the time, and probably are doing far worse than paying off porn stars.
Yeah. It is literally the pot calling the sort of kettle black. What's shocking isn't that Trump did it. It's the fact that this is what they've decided to go after him for.
Yeah.
And like I said, I do feel like it's gonna backfire. Like it already seems to have that. It's galvanized the sort of Republicans and anyone who sort of sides with Trump. Anyone who thought this was a witch hunt already now is 100% more sure.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I mean, I don't actually have any other comments on this one. I think we've covered what has happened so far pretty well and given people some perspective. If you have anything else, Chris, you can add to it. I'm just going to say, if you are watching this, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm throwing that in the middle. We're not necessarily finished yet. But Chris, any other thoughts on this one? I don't really have anything else to add.
No, not really. I feel like we sort of covered quite a bit on that. Obviously, I'm sure more is sort of going to develop. And I can't see this going away anytime soon. I did see an article here that seemed The New York Times posted their little fantasy that Trump faces 136 years in prison. And that seems to be the most ridiculous suggestion. That's not going to... Clearly what they've done is they've gathered each of the charges, 34, and said, well, if he was to be charged the maximum for each of these, that's what it could be. So I can't even see like a normal non-civilian would get that.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is not the last indictment. There will be potentially 5 other indictments of Trump, and we're going to be seeing Trump in court and making speeches for the next year and a half, at least. So, yeah, get used to this. We're all going to become experts on the U.S. legal system.
Unfortunately, like we're already experts on everything else that American news forces on us.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, I suppose. The Chinese, if you read their Global Times article, I would venture to say they're gloating a bit about the chaos of the American political system and them being seen as the stable, stable other side of the world, rather. Yeah. But yeah, that's my final thoughts for this week then, Chris. And if those are yours, then we'll catch you guys next week. And if you do have any suggestions, please put in the comments any suggestions for other videos you'd like us to go into, if you'd like us to do a deep dive. And yes, and also if you have any other ideas of correspondents that we can hire, as we've already hired President Nixon, we are always looking for new correspondents and people to hire. If you have any suggestions for us of individuals alive or dead, we will be happy to have you on board. But yeah, we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you very much, Rich.